Cool. So I think we are now live. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Women in Tech, Inspiring Future Generations with Representative Role Models. I'm joined today by Renee Jacobs, Lucy Allen, and Emily Farmer. Thanks so much for joining us today to make up such a great panel. Before we get started, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Bath Digital Festival for having us today and to all the amazing sponsors who have made it possible. So today we will be talking about why representation within tech matters, connected to a project called Digital Her that TechSpark have been running. Digital Her is basically a series of interviews that I've been doing to talk to different women in tech and non-binary people to find out about their career journeys, basically spread information about the different roles and opportunities available in tech and digital. So it would be great to hear a bit from you guys today as well about your career journeys, as well as why you think representation is so important. To introduce myself, I'm Shona. I'm the editorial and projects exec for TechSpark. Those of you who aren't familiar with TechSpark, we're basically a not-for-profit network dedicated to connecting, educating, and strengthening the tech and digital cluster in the Southwest. We work with tech and digital businesses of all shapes and sizes based in the region to help them grow using our connections and knowledge. So, without further ado, could you guys please introduce yourselves and maybe give us a little summary about how you got to where you are now? Renee, can we start with you?
Yes, so my name is Renee. I am the founder of a company called Be in Bath, which is aimed at representing people from underrepresented backgrounds in the workplace. But in addition to that, and more what I'm going to be talking about today, I'm a project manager for a technology company in Bath called Actual Experience. Actual Experience make software, and I manage both the digital projects and also business projects there. I came into technology a bit by accident, if I'm honest. I started out as an executive assistant in a digital agency in London. And then when I was working there, I realised I really love tech, and the founders of the digital agency had made their own proprietary software, and it was just so cool. I was just so into it. I was like, this is so exciting. I didn't realise before that, I guess, that people could make stuff. I don't know, like, that sounds really silly, but I just didn't, it never even occurred to me that you could think, here's a problem, let me make something digital to solve it. And so that got me really excited. I'm super into startups, and so when I left London to move to Bath, I realised I wanted to work in a startup. I started working at Actual Experience, again as executive assistant to the founder and the CEO. And when I had my daughter, I wanted to change career. And so I was talking about the options, and they said, how about project management? And I went, cool. And that's it. Here I am. That's me.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Lucy, could you give us your introduction, please?
Hi guys, my name's Lucy Allen. I'm the Director of Engagement at a full-service digital agency in Bath. I'm specialising in the games and video games and tech sector. Here I'm responsible for 3 different parts of the business, the client services division, but also the data and analytics. So everything that we do is based in data. So we have our own software tool that drives the analytics and the data part of everything that we do. And also I run the media planning and buying teams here as well. I have, like Renee, my entrance to the tech market was all rather kind of haphazard and by mistake. I ended up sharing a taxi with a lady called Anna Murray, who was the founder of a now defunct search engine called Lycos in Europe. And we just got chatting in this taxi. We ended up randomly sharing, and she offered me a job straight out of university. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Saw the whole kind of .com industry kind of bubbling around me and thought it sounded like a fabulous opportunity. So from Lycos, I moved to Amazon, where I set up the marketplace vendor system in the UK. And from Amazon, I moved to Condé Nast, where I was responsible. I was commercial director at Condé Nast, who published Vogue and Glamour magazine, Condé Nast Traveller, and I set up their internet division there. Ended up coming to Bath, worked for Future for a long time, and met the co-founders of Dialect at Future, and moved across to the business with them. So that's kind of my career in a nutshell.
Great, thank you so much. Emily?
Hi, my name's Emily Farmer. I'm a people lead for BJSS Bristol. BJSS is a consultancy, a technology consultancy. It's the largest privately owned consultancy in the UK, with offices nationwide and internationally now. So the people lead role, I'm largely responsible within Bristol for resourcing, retention of staff, implementing our diversity and inclusion strategy, performance reviews, and recruitment. So I started again quite by accident in technology 24 years ago, and I didn't do very well in my A-levels, so was offered a course at university, which was not what I was expecting. I was offered computing. So eventually came out with a degree in computer science, started off as a support analyst, then analyst programmer for various academic institutes, then made my way into media. Spent a long time as a software engineer in a startup media company, eventually moving over to the analysis field, which I was really, really passionate about. So I spent the majority of my career being a business analyst, and still continue to keep my hand in with that wherever I can.
Thanks. It's quite funny because time and time again through doing these Digital Her interviews, it always comes up, people like, oh, I kind of fell into what I'm doing now. But I find it, it's reassuring to know that people don't have the exact path planned out from day one. You have to try out a few things before you get there. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. So we're going to jump into why do you think that ensuring we have representative role models within tech and digital is so important? What impact does it have on inspiring future generations, women, non-binary people, and underrepresented people who are thinking of starting their career? Emily, could we stay with you?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I think from a consultancy perspective, it's very important that we get the diversity in the workforce, mainly because that way we produce the best products. We've shown time and time again in various studies that having a more diverse workforce means that we're able to produce and input the ideas into the product and make them suitable for everyone to use. So we develop a lot of public facing software. And that obviously means that all types of people are using it, and therefore we need to accommodate all types of people. We can't do that unless we have those people represented in the workforce. In terms of role models, I mean, I think it is important to have a number of women in the industry that we can look at and say, yes, this is an individual that has really taken it by storm. I mean, I've worked in technology, like I say, for 24 years, and role models were thin on the ground at the start of my career. Therefore, it's been quite difficult to see where I fit in the industry. I think that's just something that I struggled with for a number of years. Thankfully, I'm with a company now who are extremely strong on this stuff and providing mentorship, etc., to those individuals that we think would benefit from that. So, yeah.
Nice. Renee, can we come to you next? I know that you've been doing feature with TechSpark for Black History Month, which is sort of around creating profiles to make Black people working in tech more visible.
Yep. So I kind of agree with what Emily said. I think without there being role models, which is essentially where I look at it, is somebody who either looks like you or thinks like you or comes from the same background as you, it's really difficult to see yourself in technology, for example, in the world of tech, and you might think that you need to change aspects of yourself, or that people won't know how to take you because they've never met anybody like you before. So by having role models that you can look at and go, okay, there's a person that has the same background as me, or looks like me, or whatever, you can start to see that you will be accepted, that you will fit in, and that your contribution will be valued. And I think that's something that we all need to think about when we're creating spaces, is how we can achieve that for people, especially the younger generations coming in.
Yeah, 100%. Lucy, I know a lot has been covered, but do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from my own experience and from the kind of the agency background that I come from here as well, I think it's so important to have representation across the board, because otherwise you get a lot of groupthink in creative agencies. So, you know, if you have a group of 5 white middle-aged men sitting around a table trying to ideate, you're going to come up with ideas that only speak to them. So I think you need to have a vast array of different ways that people think, you know, coming from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, in order to really spark those ideas, spark the conversation around how we speak to people in a different and original way. So I think that any creative business that doesn't embrace diversity isn't going to be able to embrace thought leadership in the way that our clients would expect us to. I think from a female perspective, I think what's been really critical for me hasn't necessarily, and I've been very fortunate because I've worked in businesses, you know, from when I very first started, like Emily, I've been in the industry for, you know, nearly 20 years. And I think, you know, when I started, there were a lot of women in the industry, because it was very much a .com industry. Has always been very kind of egalitarian in that sense. But what I absolutely found was that there was very little representation in kind of leadership roles. So a whole lot of women came into the industry, and then they would kind of either disappear or leave, and you know, every single company was headed up by men. So you didn't have a role model in terms of, if you wanted to become a leader, how were you supposed to act? And I think you know, a lot of women started to behave and have kind of a management style that was very male. And I think something that certainly I've learned over the years is that it's absolutely 100% okay to be a woman and to be a leader, and to act as a way that a woman would. You don't have to pretend to be a man to be a leader, I think is pretty much kind of my experience, and certainly in the last kind of 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's so very true, and that's why it's so important to, you know, have women working in every single kind of role and sector. And you kind of hear the stories of like when they first made Alexa, not recognizing female voices, and just kind of really basic things like that seem to be like they can be easily avoided. So what projects or initiatives have you seen happening around you in the sector that you think are sort of particularly impressive or worthwhile to improve diversity and inclusion? Renee, could we come to you first?
Yes, I think that recently, especially, I've seen a lot of companies looking at this, and so I've been trying to think, when I saw that you were going to ask this question, I was trying to think of some different ones that really stood out to me as something really cool or interesting. And actually Microsoft are doing something really, which I think is really cool, called Code Jumper, which is to encourage people who are blind or visually impaired and to support them in becoming coders, because obviously code is something you look at, and they would struggle with that. And that's the reason I think that's really interesting, is because it's an innovative way of solving a problem, and thinking, okay, rather than just ignoring this area, how can we be innovative and create new programs, new tools, even. So they've created a new tool to help with this that could encourage people who are blind or visually impaired in this example to access coding as an opportunity. So I think that's really, really great. And anyway, I was pretty excited about it. I got a bit lost in their website, so I don't have anything else to add, but I just thought it was so cool. I was going to tell you all about it.
Yeah, well, that sounds super interesting. Lucy, how about you?
There's a couple of organisations that I think are doing some amazing work. I think there's an organisation called Women in Games, which is exactly as it said. I think there's a huge amount of toxicity and a huge amount of misogyny in the video games industry, and Women in Games is fighting very hard to get rid of that. So Women in Games draws on a huge variety of different types of jobs and different roles within the gaming industry, from programmers through esports professionals, journalists, and offers support networks, mentoring, just an opportunity as well to just talk about the problems and issues that the women are facing working in the video games industry. So I think if you're working in games, I would really recommend that you give those guys give them a Google and find out a little bit more about them. And the other organization that I think is doing amazing work is an organization called She Says, and She Says works specifically in the creative industries, and I'm always really impressed by them because of the mentoring that they're offering. So, they do a lot of kind of mentoring sessions, can find you a mentor, and specifically around getting women into leadership roles. So within the creative industries, what does female leadership look like, and how can we get more women into leadership positions? And like I say, She Says doing an amazing job. So again, if you're working in the creative industries, I would really recommend that you get involved with that group of women.
Great, thanks so much. And Emily, what projects have you noticed?
So less about projects that or undertakings that other organisations are taking place, but I can tell you that I was involved in a government project recently where it was a public facing interface yet again, and it being a government project, and good practice in fact. There was a huge amount of user research that went into that with members of the local public, the general public across different sectors. We had to do an enormous amount of work to make sure that the site was accessible. For example, we did a lot of accessibility testing, which again has become more of an industry standard, more of a good practice, absolute essential in the products that we're producing. That user research in particular was interesting because we not only tested people with, for example, learning disabilities and physical disabilities as well, but those people who came from cross sections of society, those people who, for example, didn't identify as either male or female. We were building a site that where we had to ask for gender. And I was able to participate in all of the user research, which certainly was extremely enlightening in understanding how people feel about some of the questions that we're posing to them. So I feel like technology has really responded, and some of the more recent practices are definitely improving the way in which we build our software and making it absolutely for everyone, not just a few people.
Yeah, 100%. It's super inspiring to hear all of the work and consideration that's being put into changing things. How do you think we need to continue on this for the future? What ways could we be doing more, and how could we do it better? Lucy, can I come to you first?
I think it's a question not just for women. I think this is a question for men as well. And I think it's being very mindful of the women in your organisation. I think, very often it's if there's a push towards increasing diversity, or there's a push to kind of increasing the amount of female representation, non-binary representation in an organisation, the management look to the women to sort that out. And I actually don't think that's right. I think you almost kind of need to reverse it back, and you need to put a man in charge of those initiatives, and you need to get men thinking about the answers as well. It shouldn't be our own problem to deal with our own lack of inclusivity and our own lack of representation. The men on the other side of the fence need to be helping out an awful lot on this as well. So I think it's about understanding it, certainly at a leadership level. Who are you putting on your board? Who are you putting on your senior management team? Where are those mentors and those those kind of aspirational leaders going to come from? If you as a man aren't helping, then you're part of the problem. So look very clearly, have ambitions for your own business, have ambitions to hit 50% of people on your board being female or non-binary, have an ambition to have 50% of the people on your management team being female or non-binary, and make sure that you are being really, really clear in the way that you want your business to develop and to grow, and not to ghettoize it with the women that are working for you.
Yeah, very well said. Emily, what do you think on this?
So yeah, again, there are some really positive initiatives going around at the moment that I'm incredibly encouraged by. So one of the things that again we're going to try and do, and we will do at some point this year, is to look at sourcing individuals from less traditional areas when we're recruiting. So we are looking at having introducing a program that is essentially an academy for those individuals that want to return to work, or who have done a certain amount of training but don't feel confident about, or don't have the experience to apply for a particular job. So we're opening up an academy that will invite those people to join us. And in that way, we're hoping to increase the diversity in our workforce, because we do realise how important it is for the reasons that we've said before. And then, various inclusion initiatives as well. So it's no use attracting those individuals that you're targeting and then not having an inclusive policy when those individuals arrive. So yeah, we're looking at various initiatives to make sure that everyone is provided with a comfortable and inclusive workplace rather. So yeah, I'm very encouraged to see the changes that are taking place. I think it is incredibly important that we address this, and that we do have mentorships in place and academies in place, and make sure that we are supporting those people that perhaps wouldn't necessarily think about a career in technology until presented with the opportunity. So
yeah, for sure. Renee, what do you think we could be doing better to encourage diversity and inclusion?
I think it's really down to thinking about where you can find different people from. I think that if you work in a certain type of environment, whether that's a creative kind of, so I've worked in the creative industry and I've worked in technology companies, you tend to use the same recruiters and look in the same places. So of course you're going to find the same people. So actually it's about branching out where you're looking. It's also about thinking really clearly about what you're putting in your job adverts. Do as like required experience or skills and stuff like that, do you actually need those? Are you explaining it in a way that's going to make somebody think I can't do that when really they could? So it's all of those things to think about. But I think it's also really important that when you get diverse people in your workforce at entry level kind of jobs and throughout their careers, that you're supporting them to develop, that you're helping them see and understand that they could be in a management role, how they could progress their career, giving them training opportunities and mentoring opportunities, and really building up their confidence and experience to be able to take on those roles. If you think that somebody might not see themselves in a leadership position, it's going to be difficult, as in represented in the leadership team, it's going to be difficult for them to imagine themselves there unless you give them the extra support to get there, or just even a confidence boost. So those things are things that employers can really be thinking about to support the people that they already have on their team, to develop their careers and to develop themselves into those leadership positions, which is what we all want from our careers, probably.
Yeah, definitely. This next question is sort of similar but a bit more speculative. What would you like to see in the future? Like, how in 10 years time, say, what would the ideal scenario be for making space for underrepresented groups? What do you hope will happen across the next 10 years? Lucy, we start with you.
I'm hoping that we're not having these conversations, right? I think that's what we're all hoping. I'm really hoping that in 10 years' time, we look back on panels and conversations like we're having today with absolute dismay and think, how on earth did we get to that point? And what a great job we've done in solving those issues and those problems. And practically, I don't think that's going to happen. So I think I'd like to just see a lot more women in leadership, and a lot more women in leadership across the board, not just in tech, and for that to be very accepted, and for us not to call out the exception that is the woman who is the leader, for it to be, you always see it in the press, isn't it marvelous that company X has appointed a female CEO? No, I think that should just be natural and normal. So I think it's about normalizing the conversation. It's about people from all backgrounds, from whether they're women, non-binary, from a BME background, that we shouldn't be focusing on what makes them different. We should be focusing on what makes them a great leader.
Yeah, definitely. And that transition between focusing on who they identify as, kind of sometimes I feel like takes away from conversations about actual work and what you're producing and what you're doing. Yeah, definitely agree. Emily?
Hi. Yeah, sorry, trouble unmuting. So I mean, look, we've come a long way in the last 10, 15 years. There's still a lot to do. But we should recognise how far women have come in technology to this point. I would like to see better inclusivity in the workplace. I think sometimes women can land in jobs and simply feel just awkward and unwelcome, and that just shouldn't be the case. I'd like to also see the term women and other minorities banished forever. We're not a minority, we're 50%, so that would be lovely. So yeah, no, in all seriousness, so I think a level playing field would be a really good start, and as Lucy has identified, more women in leadership, and for that to be the absolute norm, and to not raise any eyebrow at all. Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah. Renee, what do you hope for the future?
I think I definitely agree with what Lucy and Emily both said about more women in leadership. I think it would also be really great to, when we're thinking about women in leadership, to actually think about intersectionality, so all of the other identities that you might have as a woman, or indeed as a man or as a non-binary person. And in 10 years' time, hopefully across leadership levels, all different people will be represented in a much better way than they are now. I think that will help us have better technology that serves people better, and that's actually more equitable across the board anyway. So it's kind of what we need to achieve in order for the tech that we're all creating and to work well for the world. And I think that now people are really realizing how important that is. So I think it's good that we're having this conversation, because probably 10 years ago, how often would people be having conversations like this? Maybe not very often.
Yeah, definitely. So we look to the future now. Looking back a bit, could you tell me a bit about how throughout your careers, sort of landscape of being a woman in tech has changed? Obviously, Renee just touched on about how they probably weren't having these kind of conversations so much 10 years ago, but sort of anything you could share about the everyday experience of being a woman in tech. Emily, could we start with you?
Yes. So again, I refer you back to the sort of mid-90s, being a very young woman, and starting off in a completely male-dominated environment was daunting. There were some unpleasant experiences as part of that, and so being constantly reminded that you are the only woman in the room was quite a thing to overcome. But yeah, I think along the way, for every uncomfortable experience or every experience where you thought, oh goodness me, how do I navigate this one, there has been a hugely supportive set of men actually who are engaging with moving towards a more representative workforce within technology. And I have been hugely supported by my male colleagues along the way. And that's been something that's been a great learning experience, I think, for everyone involved. And that continues to this day. I have a marvelous mentor at work at the moment, and I really am hugely supported by all my male colleagues. That's not to say that we don't have some work to do, but I think men are getting much more involved in the conversation, which is the difference between now and maybe 20 years ago. Men are taking responsibility and seeing how much value it has to have a representative and diverse workforce, and really making sure that those women are well treated and included in the conversation at work. So yeah, I think it's hugely positive. It's changed a lot, and I hope it continues along that trajectory.
Yeah, definitely. Lucy, what changes have you noticed throughout your career?
I think that phrase, the past is a foreign country, is even more apt when you're looking at women working in the tech and gaming sectors. I think, I've had some like Emily, some very uncomfortable conversations, and I've had some very uncomfortable conversations with women as well. I remember one conversation with a woman in the mobile space who asked me why I thought I could do the job that I was doing because I was too young and too female. The kind of conversations that would never have happened. A man would have been a young thrusting executive, but I was too young, too female. Those conversations simply don't happen anymore. And I think, it's a good thing that you're not able to call people out in that way anymore, and taking those kind of stigmas away, and letting women feel that they are able to access the opportunities that they want to. I think there are still some problems, and I don't think that we are in any way at some kind of utopia at the moment. I think it's very, very obvious still that women are battling to get into those leadership positions. Yes, there are a lot of companies that will say that they've reached kind of 50% parity specifically in the tech sector. But if you start to dig into those numbers, you realize that yes, they've got a lot of women, they've got a lot of women in junior positions, and a lot of women in kind of back office functions. What they haven't got is 50% of their programmers being women. They haven't got 50% of their management being women. So I think sometimes the stats can hide actually what I still think is a big problem. We wouldn't be having this conversation, right? I think sometimes a lot of the problems are hidden as well, through a lot of our inability to be able to talk about these issues. And yes, we are nowhere in where we were 20 years ago, where it was very uncomfortable. As Emily said, you were the only woman in the room. You were feeling that you had no mentor, no role model. So we're not there. We're not that, it's not that awful, but at the same time, I still think there's a huge way to go, and we need to be very honest with ourselves as women that we still have to fight, and there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, definitely. And Renee?
Well, I haven't been in the tech sector that long, so I can't give you I can't give you 20 years back or anything like that for you, but I do really agree with what Lucy was saying, actually, that a lot of companies can hide their diversity figures and their women figures by going, okay, we have 50-50, but actually it's all the people that work in HR and finance, for example, are women, and then all of the coders or whatever are male. So I think that's something that we still really need to address. I'm quite fortunate that where I work we have a reasonably good balance of female coders as well, which is something I'm really proud of, not being one myself, but I think it's really great. But I think that is something that we still do need to focus on, and that these spaces can be accessible for women. I think one of the challenges actually is that if you think about your stereotypical coder, and maybe some of the personality traits that person might have, they're often in your mind already imagining a man, right? So we also need to change that. Who are you imagining when you think of somebody who's a Python developer? Who are you imagining when you think of somebody who's a digital project manager? And then who are you imagining when you think of the person who's your accountant or whatever? And it's even that mindset, because walking into a job interview, say, and not looking like they expect you to look like when you walk in, already puts you on a back foot. So that's something we need to address as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think from the experience of sort of growing up as a young woman, and you have these ideals projected onto you already from what you see about, like, oh, I'm not good at maths, and it's so easy to like dismiss certain sort of subjects that lead to certain careers purely through representation and what you think is expected of you by society. And it's kind of insane when you kind of stop to reflect about how much that actually does impact you and your own decisions. So, that's why it's important to have representation. Cool. So it would be good if we could talk a bit about your careers again, in line with Digital Her, as I've been speaking to a few different women, and luckily there's a lot to choose from, and there's been some really inspiring conversations about what people are doing in tech, what women are doing in tech, sorry. So yeah, it'd be good to know a bit more about what you guys do as well. So could you tell me a bit about why you work in the tech and digital sector? What do you enjoy the most about your work? Lucy, can we start with you?
Well, I think for me, I've got a background, a degree in politics and economics. So I think for me, because so much of what we do here is about the data, the analytics, it's a very kind of, I wouldn't say numbers-driven environment, but we very much focus in on the insights and the kind of business opportunities that those insights bring. For me, I love that. I love the analytical nature of everything that we do, and I think throughout my career, that's what I've really been drawn to, is almost the kind of the maths of the situation, right? And every job that I've done has been very heavy on that side of things. I mean, Amazon was a wonderful organization to work for. I often joke that you can do an MBA or you can just go work for Amazon, and I learned so much. The ability that they have to see through the numbers, to find the insights, to find those little nuggets of joy that a spreadsheet can kind of deliver to you, is for me a remarkable thing. And I learned so much from the team that I worked with there. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's an environment for me where my problem solving is I can use, my love of maths I can use, and kind of combine all of that and delivering what we're really proud of here, and some really great business insights from that are kind of game changing for some of our clients from the work that we're doing with them.
Amazing. Renee, what's your favourite thing about working in tech?
I actually really similar to Lucy, but I really like that technology has the power to solve problems. I am a huge problem solver, as being an executive assistant is basically solving loads of problems, and being a project manager is solving a load of problems with a Gantt chart. So I really enjoy that, and I like that through the use of technology in all of its different formats, we can and hopefully will solve loads of the problems that the world is facing. I see it as a huge opportunity, almost like a pick and mix stall of things and options that you have to address the problems that we face in the world, and that's really exciting for me. I really love working with people who are working really hard to solve problems, and important problems as well. And I also just really love the people. As much as we've been saying there's not enough women, the people I work with I really, really like, and I find that in general I found it to be a very accepting and open environment. I can go into work when we can go into work again, and be myself. I'm a bit of a sci-fi geek and nerd, and some places that's less accepted than other places, but it's, you can just go and go, yeah, I really love watching this show, have you seen this? Or can somebody, I'm working on this formula in this spreadsheet and I'm a bit stuck, and nobody looks at you like, what are you doing? Actually, there's people that really accept you for all those quirks and different bits that you have about yourself, and they're embraced as well, which is why I'm hopeful, I think, about technology, is that we do embrace everybody's quirks and different things, and once we can use those together, we can build even better technology.
That's great. And Emily?
Well, elements of both what Lucy and Renee were saying there. So I too have quite an analytical, logical brain and love problem solving. So certainly as a business analyst, you get to use those skills every single day, but also help the developers and testers to see things from a more user-centered perspective, and to make sure that all of the problems that we're solving are solved with the user in mind, whoever they may be. So it's kind of more people related again. So making sure that we build those products with people in mind, and make sure that they are usable and they are easy. You remove any frustration from using a software system. In terms of my current role, I enjoy the challenge. Every single day is different. Every single day there is something new to learn, and so from that perspective, I'm always challenged. My brain is always working, and I thoroughly enjoy that aspect of it. I do get to use the logical part of my brain quite a lot still, so that's something that fascinates me, being able to solve problems for individuals and make sure that everyone is provided with a happy environment where they can thrive and really enjoy their own careers, and help them to do that is a most enjoyable part of my role, I think.
That's great. Before I go on to the next question, just remember that I forgot to say to the audience, if you have any questions for our panelists today, please do put them in the Q&A, and we'll try and find some time at the end to answer them. This might be putting you on the spot a little bit, but do each of you have a sort of, piece of work or project or anything that really stands out to you within your career that was sort of your favorite thing to work on? This can be anything like more techie, more people focused. Lucy, can we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do get asked this question quite a lot, and I always give the same answer. And it was working at Amazon, and it was launching Marketplace in the UK. And believe it or not, sometimes the glitz and the glamour of the front of Amazon isn't replicated by the processes and the infrastructure in the back end. So we were launching it basically on a series of spreadsheets, which was a unbelievable experience. The access that we had to some of the UK's and in Europe's biggest retailers, bringing them into the program, negotiating all the deals, getting the software running, getting all the sales volumes together it was a remarkably stressful but just a wonderful time of being able to see something kind of end to end, and a project like that for Amazon was an absolute highlight of my career, something I'm really, really proud of, and just to see the growth in that platform and how it's transformed Amazon's business from the ground up as they've moved and developed as well is something that I will always treasure. Great.
Emily, how about you?
It's a really hard question because there's loads to choose from. I guess one of the more satisfying projects to launch was a startup company that was funded by venture capitalists that I work for, and we launched the first video on demand streaming service in the UK, and it was a tiny company who had really built some video servers in a garage, and they got ahead of the game and ahead of all of their large competitors. Super satisfying, and really, really interesting, fast-paced, hard-working stuff. Similarly, I worked for Channel 4 for a while, and we were able to launch their 4OD, as it was called at the time, so 4 on demand website ahead of schedule, on a really, really top performing team. It was super fun to work with and really rewarding. So that's kind of some of the more glamorous technology projects with the champagne at the end. But I guess some of the most satisfying have been those very large scale projects that I particularly enjoy, because you're part of a large team, and but you still really can provide input that makes a difference and can change the direction of the project or the product, as a business analyst. And I guess one of the most challenging but rewarding ones was one for again a government client of BJSS, where the output was so socially beneficial that that's where the reward came. You understood that you were involved in something bigger than just a product. It was something that was for the benefit of society. So yeah, super rewarding. I personally enjoy the very large projects and sticking with them for long periods of time. I have other colleagues who prefer the more discovery phase of a development and love to just shape it and then move on to another thing. But yeah, for me, it's the long-term stuff, the slog. I seem to like.
Sounds great. Renee, how about you?
I'm afraid I don't have anything as glamorous to say. I really love process improvement. So for me, it's those types of projects, which if you love getting things, I just like things to be right, and I like things to work well for the team that are using them. So for me, getting involved in a process improvement is so exciting. How miserable is that? No, it's really exciting for me. So a really great one from a few years ago was it was helping the team just work. It's all, for me, it's a lot of it's about communication. For me, project management is really about communication. It's about getting the team to work together, how you communicate, how you hand over your work to the next person, how and if you understand what impact your role has on the larger project and what you're trying to deliver, and getting those processes right is super exciting for me. And I'm in one at the moment with my current job, and it's just really great because it helps everybody look at what they're doing currently, how they can improve it, and then you just get to try different things, try out different ways of working, see what the output is, and hopefully get better products delivered to your customers even more quickly, with everybody happy all along the way, which is what I'm really into.
Love it. Great, thanks so much so far, guys. Just to wrap things up, what piece of advice would you share to someone looking to start their career and considering a future in tech and digital? Emily, if we start with you.
I think I would say certainly don't be intimidated by any environment that you enter. You are absolutely valid within that environment. But I would also say don't be afraid. Careers are long. And this is an ever-changing environment. Don't be afraid to try several different roles within the same industry, such as technology. There's plenty of scope to move between roles, as many of us on this call have done already, and just wait until you find something that you really love and you're really passionate about and makes you want to get up and do day in, day out, because essentially that's what you're going to have to do. So don't be afraid to move sideways, across, upwards, take a step back, and change and adapt all of the time according to your own interests, because you change over time as well.
Amazing, thank you. Renee, what would your piece of advice be?
Probably similar to Emily's actually, is don't be afraid to try something, and then also if you don't like it, don't be afraid to go, that wasn't for me. If you're like 18, you're going to be working for a very long time until you retire. So there's plenty of time to try different things, see what you like, see what works for you, and see what doesn't work for you. So just go for it. And I also think it's easier said than done, but don't be afraid to be yourself. And if you can find role models or other people who you know of who can support you in that, that's really, really great. But I always try at work to just be all of myself, so that if somebody else comes along who's like me, that space will already be there for them. And so I think that's something that we can all try to do as well, as be yourself.
For sure. And Lucy, what would yours be?
Yeah, I think like Emily and like Renee, I would just say go for it. I think it's an incredibly rewarding and incredibly exciting and fast-moving environment to be in. I think if you're into change, you're into driving change, and if you want to be kind of at the cutting edge of the development of a whole manner of different parts of the world that we live in, I think a career in tech and gaming is absolutely the right place for you. I would say certainly something that I find incredibly valuable through my career, and something we've been trying really hard to do here at Dialect, is to make sure that people have mentors as well. So I think positively look for a mentor. Put yourself out there, ask people if they will mentor, if they'll help you with your career as well. And it doesn't necessarily need to be somebody in the tech sector, but it is so good if you're having problems in the office, if you're not getting the promotions that you want, if you're not understanding how to communicate with your male colleagues, then just having somebody to talk to about that, a kind of a second pair of eyes, a third voice in the conversation is incredibly valuable. So go for it, throw yourself 100% into a career in tech, but don't be afraid to ask for help if you feel like you're getting unstuck a little bit.
That's great, thanks. And I think that's just about everything. Thank you so much for your time today, guys. It's been really great to talk to you. Super inspiring. Just a quick plug to say that next week we'll be launching Digital Her on TechSpark. There's going to be, I think, an interview a week with the different women in tech. With some will have video interviews accompanying them. So keep your eyes peeled for that, for lots of inspirational stories. So yeah, thanks so much, guys.